Good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm Patricia Doxey. I'm a reporter with the Daily Freeman. We're here today with the candidates for county executive, Jack Ryan on my left, and no, excuse me, it's early, guys. I'm sorry.
My favorite Tom Clancy character.
That's true. Jack Hayes on my left and Pat Ryan on my right. I apologize for morphing you gentlemen into one person. Thank you for being here. The format is I'm going to give you each a few minutes to make an opening statement. We'll talk about some of the issues in the race, and then you'll have the opportunity to make a closing statement. Again, I'm Patricia Doxey. I'm here with Yvonne Lahara, the senior editor of the Daily Freeman, who will be running all of the technology. This is the second time we've been here. The first time was for the special election. This one is for a full 4-year term, right?
It's a four.
Four. It's a 4-year term. Jack, I'm going to ask you to make your opening statement first this time, since Pat made his first last time.
Thank you. I'm Jack Hayes. I'm a resident of Gardner, New York. I grew up in Ulster County by way of Brooklyn, and I attended Fallsburg Central School and Ulster County Community College. I served 4 years in the Navy and went on to do a 33-year career with the New York State Police. And afterwards, I was elected town supervisor in the town of Gardner, and then later yet, Ulster County legislator for the Shongum, Gardner, and New Paltz district. I would like to offer my services to people of Ulster County for the position of Ulster County Executive. I've worked with all levels of government for a long time. My state police career exposed me to numerous jurisdictions, whether it be public service, utilities, governments, different layers of school districts and taxing districts. So I am familiar with the situation, and I believe I can do a good job for the people of Ulster County.
Thank you. Pat?
Good morning. It's great to be back here. Thank you for doing this. I actually promoted the debate at this morning. We spoke earlier this morning at Chamber of Commerce. We was promoted, so hi to everybody watching. I'm Pat Ryan. I've been serving as a county executive for the last just over 4 months, and I love the job. It's an incredible honor to serve in this position. I grew up here, right here in Kingston, reading the Freeman. My family's been in Ulster County for 5 generations. And my wife and I just welcomed our sixth generation. We have a 12-week-old at home, Theo, and we also live in Gardner. So Jack and I are neighbors. The last time actually that we sat here, which was only a few months ago, I outlined this vision for leading our county forward and really taught my qualifications. And I was honored to be elected. So I wanted to take this opportunity to kind of say, and kind of outline these are the things I said I was going to do, and here's the progress we're making towards them. So I talked specifically about holding the line on taxes. I know how much of a burden that places on folks and how people are really struggling to afford to live here. So I was very proud that we actually lowered our county taxes in my most recent budget to the lowest level in over a decade. I talked about tackling the opioid epidemic, which we know is just ravaging our community. It's made in 2018, Ulster County, the second worst of 62 counties in New York State for overdoses. And so already in just a few months, we've secured over $3 million over the next few years to tackle the epidemic, and we are going to end the epidemic in Ulster County. I talked about protecting our environment and leaning into our environment as a competitive economic advantage. And one of the biggest things we did there was fund the first ever Green Careers Academy in partnership with SUNY Ulster in my most recent budget that'll actually train young people and workers in green and clean technology to get good paying jobs in that area. So those are some of the things we've done in I think, a pretty short amount of time. We've had a lot of progress. We've been running full sprint, 100 miles an hour, and I plan to hopefully continue that going forward. And so I'm looking forward to the discussion and ultimately, hopefully, to earning the support of the residents of our county.
Thank you. I think that I'd like to start building off of one of the things that you said, and Jack, I'm going to ask you this question first. No matter who's elected, the county executive in 2020 will inherit your Mr. Ryan's budget. Have you looked at that budget at all, and particularly in terms of the tax rate and the spending? What do you think about it?
Currently, it's obviously the budgets that I have been looking at, discussing with a few people. I believe that some of the ability to come up with the budget that we have is by using the reserve funds. And to that extent, I don't know that we've accomplished a growth situation with regard to revenues coming in, or whether we can look forward to assistance from New York State with regard to our budget. That said, I'm a little concerned about the portions of the budget that pertain to mental health and probation, because they're going to get hit very hard when the new criminal justice reforms come into effect in January. Because if people are not going to the custodial situation at the county level and possibly not at the state level, but they're going to be in Ulster County. They're going to need probation people, and they're going to need mental health people, and they're going to need social services. So whether or not we have enough money for this cost shift that the state has done to the county, I consider it a cost shift. They have set up a situation where they're going to do less of the treatment, and the county and town levels are going to do more of the treatment. So I'm a little concerned about whether there's an adequate buffer for those particular spots in the budget. So,
Thank you. Pat, your budget includes 30 new positions. That's
27.
27. Okay, 27 new positions. That's a lot of new positions to put into a first-time budget. Can you explain the need for all of those new people in Ulster County? By the way, it's the same number that the former county executive reduced the workforce by in his first budget.
Sure. So first off, I'm excited to inherit my own budget. I spent a lot of time with our team, really diving deeply on the details to get a budget right, which makes significant investments in tackling the opioid epidemic, protecting our environment, a new innovative approach to economic development, all while lowering the burden on taxpayers. More services and lower taxes. So I'm really proud of that budget. One of the things that we did do is add some new folks. It's actually in line with some of the additions that previous administrations had added over time, although not in the first budget. Most of the new positions that we added are driven, as Jack alluded to, by requirements coming down from the state. So the two big areas where we saw significant state legislation was in criminal justice reform. And so in that area, we did provide additional resources to the district attorney, to our probation department, and we added 7 new public defenders to ensure that we're really balancing the scales of both prosecution and defense, and that everyone in the county can have a good defense no matter their situation. So many of the positions came from there. Those are many of them fully or partially funded by state requirements. So I should have the exact number, but about 70% of those positions are we're getting federal and/or state funding to cover those positions. So that's something that.
So then, where are the other positions? If obviously not all of the 27 are in probation, district attorney, or public defender. Where are the other positions?
So one of the ones I'm most proud of, we added the first ever chief diversity officer to our county workforce. The reality is that right now our county workforce still doesn't reflect the diversity of the actual county and the people that we serve. And I think that's critical that we have someone whose sole job is to really get out there and engage with every community in our county, particularly communities that haven't felt like they're able to get access to take the civil service exams, to be properly prepared and ready for those exams and to earn, you know, these good paying jobs and have that opportunity to serve. So that's a position that we added. We're adding several positions in the Office of the Aging at no cost to county taxpayers. We're able to secure funding from the state to up our level of senior services, which is something that's critically important. Likely we'll add one additional person in our Department of the Environment. I've made the environment a key priority, as I've talked about, and so giving our department the resources to implement that is critical. So those are some of the other areas.
Thank you. Jack, you heard Pat talk about some of the positions that he's adding in the criminal justice system and the Chief Diversity Office for the Aging, Department of the Environment. Do you see those as positions worthy of being added to a budget at this particular time in this county?
I think the positions in mental health and probation are almost mandatory because there's going to be so much burden put on those departments that, and they've usually run over caseload. The probation in particular, I was chair of the Law Enforcement and Public Safety Committee, and those folks were always behind the eight ball. So they've got more funding. I don't know if it's appropriate, but whether it's going to be ongoing funding or is this just from the state? And I mean, is it something with a limited, like an annual re-up, or is it the state and federal aid?
You're asking me.
Yeah.
So it's a mix. In any of the federally and state funded positions, it's at least 5 years out.
Okay.
So we're being sure that we're planning as far out as we can see in that regard. Look, I take my responsibility to be a steward of taxpayer dollars extremely seriously. That's why I was focused on reducing that tax burden. The way that I think we should measure government's performance is what's the impact on our residents, so we're lowering taxes, and what are the results? I mean, I understand that the number of personnel matters, obviously. We're driving. What are the services that we're delivering? That's really how I want to continue to measure success. Are we delivering the best services at the best value, and not just doing it here in Kingston, but ensuring every corner of the county is being served? And when I came into office, I set out to, and we're almost complete with doing a town hall in every single town of the county. We've now done 20 town halls in just about 20 weeks. And I have heard, we need more services in every corner of the county. Mental health services absolutely is something that we need to continue to resource, and we're looking hard at that.
Thank you. So you've sort of outlined your big 5 priorities. You've done that previously, and you sort of outlined what you're doing to achieve those goals. I'm going to ask Jack what you see as in your mind the big issues facing Ulster County. We sort of know where you're at, and we'll talk.
I'm happy to talk more about it.
We will.
Yeah.
I promise.
Cool.
I think there's a confusing message with regard to economic development that says, yes, Ulster County is open for business, and yet when business does come, they are subjected to obstacles which really slow down any sort of development. I think if Ulster County planning and possibly town planning and town zoning were more in sync with each other, we could facilitate growth. We've got the infrastructure. We've got 3 exits off the thruway. That's important, very important, because it links us into a transportation system throughout the Northeast. It's a crossroads with 84 and the thruway and Mass Pike. Most businesses, large businesses, need that sort of logistic backup. So I think, and being able to grow business in Ulster County is going to address the situations of poverty in Ulster County, and hopefully in areas like Ellenville, which have been impoverished for many years, decades actually. So So the county needs to ensure if a good place for people to invest. I don't believe the county needs to be the driving force. I believe private enterprise should be the people who bring about growth in industry. But I think we can facilitate it by having the proper infrastructure for them.
Can I jump in on economics?
Yep, because you just signed legislation creating a Department of Economic Development, right?
So for the first time ever, we actually have a fully dedicated Department of Economic Development. This is a huge priority. And, I grew up here on 37. I think about my peers that grew up here, many of which feel that they can't come back here because there aren't jobs or there's not housing they can afford, or in many cases, childcare is prohibitively expensive and people choose to not work to that degree. So making sure that young professionals coming here, working people and seniors, able to age and stay here with dignity, all ties back to really ramping up our economic development. So we set up, in partnership with the legislature, this department. We're increasing the funding there to both really broaden and deepen our approach on economic development. So what do I mean by that? Jack spoke about infrastructure. I disagree respectfully that we actually have the infrastructure we need. Sure, we have 3 throughway exits. We don't have broadband internet in many parts of this county still. We have a lot of work to do on sewer and water infrastructure, which is holding back development in many of the more rural parts of our county. So investing in infrastructure is critical and core to my plan and how we're ramping up funding there, both in the operating budget and in the capital budget. The other piece is workforce development. I talked about this Green Careers Academy, where we partnered with SUNY Ulster. We set up an innovative, quick turn, 8-week curriculum where young people or workers can go through, leave after 8 weeks with 3 industry-leading certifications in clean and green technology and building technology, and actually get a job in an area of high growth right now in our economy in Ulster County and in New York State. So those are the kind of economic development investments we need to be making. And just the last thing I'll say here, we have to both be making short-term investments and decisions, but we also have to have a long-term view of where we're going. So I've stood up a working group called the Ulster 2040 Working Group, and the whole idea is to really have that long-term, over-the-horizon vision of what are the areas of growth in our economy, and what are those short, medium, long-term investments we need to make in infrastructure and education and housing to make sure that we're successful there. So we have a robust plan, and that'll take some time to work. That's one of the things I'm really excited to continue to work on and give an opportunity to continue to serve in this role.
Do you want to add anything to that?
I believe I agree with the idea of having a strategic plan, and the problem I had with strategic planning is that the county was on one level, and the towns were on another level, and communication wasn't always good. The fact that the exec has reached out to the towns for the town hall meetings is now a standing start, because that's what's going to help. And not only that, we've got to go beyond. We've got to go upwards to the state assembly, state senate, and we've got to be able to function with the federal government as well. So in that respect, I totally agree that there needs to be a great exchange of information if we're going to come up with a good solution to making things better in Ulster County.
That's what people expect from government. We should actually cooperate and be aligned. That's why, as you said, after doing these town halls, I learned a ton in every single town hall from both residents who showed up, but also town leadership, town board members, supervisors, mayors, and I think we are aligned. I've had extensive conversations with our state leaders in the assembly and in the senate, as well as our congressmen, and I think we actually have this moment in time where we are very aligned in seeing this path forward. So I'm excited to continue to build on that.
One of the things that, one of the issues that have come up again and again as I talked to the candidates for the Ulster County Legislature, who obviously is the other side of county government, is the need for affordable housing. I hear that over and over from just about every candidate I've spoken with. We've got to do something more for affordable housing. What, if any, is the county's role in developing affordable housing in your mind? And I'll ask you that question first.
Yeah, so you're right. In every town hall I've done, I've heard this just bumping into people on the streets. And it's not just sort of the narrow definition of affordable housing, meaning subsidized housing. These are working people at every level of our economy and our society that can't afford to live. I had a woman in town of Ulster 2 weeks ago, I cannot get this out of my head, tell me this story that, you know, she's a senior, she was 73, and her rent had just been increased over 30%, and her landlord was basically forcing her out. So we have a lot of challenges with housing affordability, both rental and home ownership. So the role of the county, we have two main pieces to this. One is in through our planning board and planning processes, making sure in coordination with the towns that as they're laying out their plans and proposing them and running them by us, we make sure that every project we're looking at for housing includes a consideration of affordable housing and workforce housing and senior housing. So that's something that I've asked my team and administration to really look at. The other piece is home ownership. I met at my town hall in Shandaken, I met this young couple who wanted to move back here, who were from Shandaken, but had to go to Greene County because they both had jobs, but they couldn't afford to buy a home. So in my budget this just a few weeks ago, we laid out almost over $500,000 in grants and funding to help first-time home buyers, and we're rolling out that plan in partnership with RUPCO. So we do have a role. I mean, the towns have a significant role to play, and of course the city of Kingston. So we work closely with them.
Jack, and you've been on the legislature, and this has been an issue the legislature has sort of grappled with for quite a long time. What do we do?
Well, once again, I can agree with Patrick on the fact that the definition is rather vague, as opposed to what's affordable. Maybe what's affordable to me is not what's affordable to someone else. And so coming up with some sort of a definition that helps people be able to plan, because you have people who develop properties, and there's a couple really wonderful people like Rich Gerantine that creates senior housing, and it's really high quality. You have Woodland Pond that's very high quality, but it may be affordable to those folks, but it's not affordable to a large number of folks. So, and to the extent that we're going to say, if we're going to say we're going to subsidize, we have to figure out how does that happen, and where does the funding come from. Legislature's doing the funding. They've got the exec's budget, but they also have their own budget, and then the two have to match. And we're a fairly highly taxed county right now, and so there's got to be a point where you recognize, which is the last statement on every resolution in the legislature, financial impact. We've got to know what it's going to cost the average overall taxpayer for a portion of affordable housing, if that's the way we set it up.
Do you think that Ulster County should be subsidizing housing?
To the extent that it's already subsidizing people's housing and with social services. So, that's not a question. The question is, are we doing it economically, and are we getting the best bang for a buck? Would it be better if we set aside a certain group of housing, which has historically happened coming out of New York City? And how do you keep it from becoming what they would call the projects in New York City, which has a negative kind of reputation? So there's not an easy fix, but I do agree that there needs to be a mix. That's what we were talking about in Gardner back, now it's 15, almost 20 years ago. And so, and for every project, there was a discussion of whether a certain area of that development is, affordable or lower income based housing. So, which means that the whole project pays for the fact that, you can integrate these different financial statuses. So, and that would be private industry rather than publicly financed. So, if the developer went in with the notion that they can put aside so much of the project at a different maybe gross profit, then I would like that idea better. But and the only other thing is that the affordability. Can everyone else afford to live here, or else is everyone going to leave town and go south?
Yeah, and I want to be really clear. I'm not totally sure where you stand on this. I want to be clear that we have a housing emergency in Ulster County. I mean, at every level, people cannot afford, people that are working, people that have worked their whole lives and are retired, young people already buried with college debt cannot afford housing. That is a housing emergency. And that's something I take seriously. And we have to help folks, not just with helping to subsidize rent, which is something that we do and continue to do, but we have to help build more housing inventory in the county. A big part of the reason prices have gone up is that we have a lack of inventory. In the city of Kingston, we have under 1% vacancy rate in our apartment housing stock. 12 of 24 towns in the county are under 5%, which is statutorily defined as a housing emergency under New York state law. So we have a lot of work here to do. And this is something existentially important to the success of our economy, that people need a place where they can live and support their family, or else they are going to leave. So we're working really heavily and focused on this.
And that's interesting when you talk about the need for more housing inventory, because what we're seeing in communities across the region, across the state, and actually across the country, is that a lot of properties that would either A, be sold, or B, be turned into rental properties are being used instead as Airbnbs.
Right.
Now, there are towns that are passing laws about that, but do you see the county as playing a bigger role in that? Do you think the county should play a bigger role in that? And if you do, what is that role?
You want to go first, or I'm happy to go first?
Go ahead.
So the short answer is that by law, the towns really play the lead here. And I think that is important because as I've traveled around, there's a very different situation from town to town. In Woodstock, for example, over 50% of the housing stock is short-term rentals. In Gardner, it's more like 11 or 12%, and it varies across the county. So I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all approach to this. But I do see a role, and we're stepping up our role as a county in helping each town navigate this. So our planning department is working closely to review each town's legislation and help them think through the right principles here. The big worry that I have is you have in many cases, corporate entities coming in and buying up multiple properties and effectively running businesses, but doing it sort of under the guise of, we're just running a short-term rental. That's a problem because that's driving up prices because it's reducing inventory for people that live here and have lived here their whole lives. So that's why Woodstock passed their law. They were the first town in the county to do so. And I think they did a really good job, not just in the law, but in how they approached it. They had a fulsome, extensive community process to get input from everybody. So I see the county playing a role there. And then the only other area where we do play a role is in collecting the occupancy tax. In the same way that our hotels pay occupancy tax, short-term rentals must also do so. So we've been working to up compliance with that, and we have continued to drive in more revenue to support investments in the county by doing so. So that's something we'll continue to work on.
Jack, do you think the county should be playing a bigger role in the regulation of Airbnbs?
Well, helping to structure the legislation or the law would be because they have more assets. Most of the towns have a town attorney, and the town attorney is like a general practitioner. And quite often, if you have to hire a specialized attorney for a certain type of legislation, it's very cost prohibitive. And if we could share the resources of the county, with the towns with regard to making some sort of a template that would work so that there's a lot of B&Bs that are flying under the radar. They're not even known to be a B&B. It's sort of the underground B&Bs. So there's no income coming in from them at all. And, it's a situation where knowing how to write the legislation so that it's usable, so many laws get written and then they're not enforceable or they're not helpful. They get clogged up, and then the resources there to make sure that they're addressed by the different people are not there. That's where I could see a sharing of services with regard to, and we have structured and shared services in the past, and then I think it came off the front burner somewhat for a while. But I think if anything, that would be outstanding because county planning is rather professional. We have Dr. What's the director of planning?
David Doyle.
Yeah. And he's got a doctorate.
Does he? I didn't know that. I didn't know Dennis. I'm not sure about that.
He does. So, and he's had it for quite a while. So I've worked with him for many years, even before I left the state police. But there's another edge to the rental problem is that there's new tenants' rights laws that are making some landlords just get out of the renting business because in some situations it's felt that it favors the tenant and gives a tenant very strong rights, and a tenant that is not a good tenant is very difficult to remove from a building, and sometimes it becomes destructive. And so once again, it comes back to people rent houses because they want to make a profit. Governments invest in low-income housing to serve a need. So there's got to be some sort of a cooperative effort if we're going to meet both ends.
Can I just correct one point on the Airbnb piece? I think it's important that folks know that we actually have invested as a county in software that helps us understand exactly where every single short-term rental is in the county, so that we can make sure we've upped our compliance with collecting those revenues. And that's, to your point on shared services, something that the county invested in that we provide to any town that wants. So we invest in gathering that information so I can then give each supervisor and town board a list of this is every short-term rental in your area, just so you're aware. So that's one of the many areas where we are doing shared services. And I have reinvigorated our shared services council and process. We'll be submitting an extensive plan by the end of this calendar year. And our goal is to significantly up the revenues that way. So folks understand this is a really important opportunity where if we can show New York State that we, by towns and counties cooperating with each other, save each other money, the state will actually match those savings. So that's new revenue that we can capture. And that's an area that we've been very focused on, an area that my innovation team, under the leadership of Tim Wiedemann, is focused on really ramping back up that shared services, which is very important.
So if somebody had a B&B and they weren't paying any sort of taxes or occupancy, and they're posting online, you would try to capture that?
So I know passions, but I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to let this sort of.
So yes, that's exactly what happens.
Okay.
So anyone using any of the online platforms, Airbnb or otherwise, the software gathers that and gives us that information so that we can then ensure they're paying the taxes, and then the town's able to do whatever they want with that in terms of, enforcing their zoning and codes and safety and so on and so forth. So that's another great example of the town and county cooperating to help everybody.
I want to turn the conversation. We've got about 24 minutes, and I got a couple of things I want to talk about. So I want to turn the conversation for a minute again to the opioid crisis. This is just an issue that does not seem to be going away. I did make a note here. I think, Pat, you were the last person to ask first, right?
Sounds right.
I think so. I try to keep track, but we go back and
You're
forth
better
and
than
then
me.
I lose track. District attorney recently charged somebody who was selling fentanyl-laced heroin that caused the death of somebody. They charged him with criminally negligent homicide. The opioid problem seems to be, it just continues. What do you agree with that approach that the DA's office took, I guess is my first question. And what do you see the county's role in trying to stem this crisis?
I believe that we need to work closely with the federal government because the heroin's coming through the southern border. The situation of not cooperating with immigration, I think, creates a problem. I think it creates a grave problem with safety, and it contributes to the heroin distribution network. And so, without having secure borders or without cooperating with federal authorities, I see a real danger. Years before the 9/11 attacks, the cooperation between the federal and local agencies was poor. It was cited as a possible influence on how those attacks were able to be successful. It was written up in the after-action reports. So I think we have to cooperate with every agency that gives us an ability to stem the tide. If it's an epidemic, we need to isolate it. We need to create a quarantine. We need to eradicate it. And we can't do that when we have an open southern border or a policy in the county where we say we're not going to work with federal agencies with regard to the fact that there's illegal immigration and that we're part of it.
So tackling the opioid epidemic has been one of the big 5 priorities that I've outlined from the beginning. And as I said in my opening, we have already, in just over 4 months, made significant headway here. We've stood up a countywide opioid prevention task force that includes members of law enforcement, members of the private sector, public sector, not-for-profit, health leaders, mental health advocates, and we've secured over $3 million between federal and state funding to actually have the county level of government be the lead in plugging the gaps in our system so that we get to a place where we don't have more than 1 person per week right now in Ulster County dying from an opiate overdose. So this is something I take very seriously. At the end of the day, it's clear to me that this is a public health epidemic. We tried for a long time to sort of arrest our way out of multiple surges of drugs into our country, with opiates being the most recent. The majority of the data actually shows that the supply is primarily, particularly fentanyl, to your question, Patty, coming from China. That's synthetic. And so focusing on the ground local efforts like we did in the case you mentioned, where our urgent task force, the cooperation between the sheriff and the DA, for the first time ever, said, we will not tolerate people poisoning our citizens and flooding our streets with poison. And I fully support that decision to send a very clear message that we have no tolerance. So that's going to deter supply, hopefully, and we'll continue to work that. But we need to get at the mental health and health aspects of this. We need medication-assisted treatment, which we're ramping up. We need more recovery beds. We need peer counselors so that after people leave treatment, they can continue to be on a path to recovery. So those are the kind of things that we're going to fund under my leadership, and I will not rest until we eradicate this epidemic.
Okay. Jack, do you want to add anything or respond to that in any way?
No, I'm happy that we are going to eradicate it, and I just believe that we have to do more at stopping it at the border than we've been able to do so far.
So it sounds like you oppose the concept of sanctuary cities and becoming a sanctuary county or
That's correct.
Pat, where do you stand on that?
So one of the first things I did when I took office is made an executive order that said that my county departments, whether that's our social services, our health department, will not share any personal information about people we're serving with ICE or other immigration officials. I think it's critical that, and I'm, I believe required in my job to serve every resident of our county. No one should be afraid to come get help if their heating oil is out and they are going to freeze in the winter, or they need a little bit of economic assistance to buy some new clothes for their children going into the new school year. I want to make it clear that anyone who needs help can come forward and feel safe coming forward and asking for help. I think that's critical to how we should approach our job as public servants.
So Jack, the county executive said that one of the first things he did was pass an executive order directing the departments in the county to act in that fashion. If you're elected, would you rescind that executive order, and why or why not?
Yes, first day. I would rescind it the first day. I would repeat, there needs to be full cooperation between local and federal agencies if we're not going to be able to handle this epidemic, if that's what it is, or just gross criminal activity by ourselves. It doesn't lend itself to that. It's even international, really. And the situation with immigration, the county government is not set up to do immigration law. That's not our job. The United States Congress has been absent in reforming the laws that they have, and they don't want the existing laws prosecuted. So it's the United States Congress has got a responsibility to act credible. If they don't have a law, it's the Congress's job to make the law. It's the executive's job to enforce the law. I've worked for the executive branch in New York State for 33 years. We did not interpret law. That's for the judges. We went with the law on the books, and that the black and white is what you can look at and go to court, and then you can appeal it or you can prosecute it and get a conviction. But if someone is going to make up different policy that circumvents law, I don't see how it's going to be able to work out. We cannot do immigration policy at the county level.
And we're not. We're focused on delivering services to anybody that needs them, and I think that's core to the job. I don't think you understand the way that the order is written, but that's okay. Federal law enforcement can continue to do their job and come into our county and do whatever they want. We're just not, say someone shows up for a social services appointment, or in the case of a specific example that happened in Ulster County, shows up for a probation appointment. That information under my executive order will not be shared that they showed up or that they're at a particular place at a particular time. That way they can do the things they're required to do, get the services they need, and not have fear of being frankly ripped away from their family and sent out of our country.
If someone's doing something illegal,
they're not doing something illegal. They're doing what they're
required.
Being
here is illegal. That's doing something illegal. Well, you can disagree with it, but if you didn't get into the country legally, you got into the country illegally. I would set up a situation that pulled people in and tried to find legal status for them, so that they can become citizens if that's what they want, or they can receive certain sort of legal status to be in the country. But to keep them under the level of legality, it's not helping them either. That's just continuing what I would think is bad practice.
I think we disagree on this.
And I think we're going to move on. Probably one more question. We're at quarter of, and then I'm going to give you both a little bit to wrap up. But I want to talk about money. When did I start with? Started with you.
It's my turn first.
It's your turn first.
Hey.
All right.
I'm fine.
You have $94,427 in your war chest.
Sounds, maybe as of the last filing.
As of the last filing.
We don't have it now.
A lot of that money is from $100, $500 local contributions, but you do have a significant amount of money that's coming from New York City, that's coming from out of the area. One of the things that you had said the last time we were here is that you were proactively taking a stand not to accept corporate money, corporate PAC money,
LLC money.
And LLC money. You are getting an awful lot of money out of labor PACs, out of labor union PACs.
Yeah, I've had tremendous support from organized labor. Workers in our county need someone to advocate for them, and I consider our friends in labor from the building trades to CSEA, which represents the majority of my workforce who endorsed me in this campaign as important allies. I mean, people are working very hard. Families are working hard, and they're not able to make ends meet, and we need to make sure we're advocating for people to get living wages.
I do notice, though, that you are taking money, maybe not from the corporations themselves, but from CEOs of companies. I did a quick search, and you get $2,000 from the CEO of KLM Construction. You got $2,500 from another firm called KLM Equities, who has a different CEO. You got $4,000 from another CEO of another company. How does taking money from those CEOs of these companies and these corporations fit into your pledge to not take corporate money?
So every contribution that I receive, I think, is an opportunity for an individual, not a corporation, to make their voice heard in our democracy. And I'm really proud of all the support I've had, from people who contribute $1 to people who contribute more. The vast majority of support I've had has been grassroots support from people in our county. But I'm also proud that I've had friends of mine and people I've worked with in the private sector or in the military support me, who may not, live here, who know me, who believe in my vision. And I think that, that's something that I'm proud to have that support.
Why should somebody from New York City have a voice in Ulster County's elections?
Well, a lot of people who live here are often, work in the city. My wife works part-time in the city. We're 75 miles from New York City. Our economy is intimately interlocked, and we need to actually, I think, increase our cooperation with and be part of the economic success happening in the city. So many of the folks who support me may work in the city and live here, or things like that. So I think it makes sense.
Jack, you got $2,000 in your war chest.
Whopping. We're going to go crazy towards the end. Just probably spend it all.
Do you not in one place, I hope.
No.
Do you think that money matters in these kinds of races?
Absolutely. The money is phenomenal. There's going to be a flood of beautiful glossy postcards coming out this week, and they're going to hit. And I wouldn't have enough money to fund one mailing, and yet you will see mailings from a single candidate for 5 and 6 days. So and a lot of people aren't aware of who's running, even at this late stage. People who are not don't know. So that the money is going to make a big difference in reaching people. I've done what I could. I've done face-to-face. I've done Facebook, some of that, and I've done what I feel I started out trying to do, is that just be able to tell the people of Ulster that there's two different opinions of how to run government, and there's not just a single party for the entire state of New York, but there are other parties out there still. I've done what I've done on a shoestring, if not less than a shoestring. But I've reached a lot of people, and I feel fairly good about the fact that I've given people the opportunity to have two names on the ballot where it looked like there would only be one. So.
Okay, we have a few minutes. If you'd like to wrap up, we can give you a few minutes to make some closing statements and anything else that we didn't cover if you'd like. Who did I start with? I can't keep
In the very beginning, it was
in the very beginning.
Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, that's right. That's right.
I thought there might
I
be
grew
some-
up obsessed with Tom Clancy.
With Tom
books, so
Clancy.
that's like my,
Yeah, me too.
he's my
One of
guy.
my favorites.
Now we have the new Amazon series. New
I
season's about to
know.
start. I'm very excited.
I know.
Sorry. off topic.
So we started with Jack. So he got the first word. I'm gonna let you have the last word. So Jack, I'm gonna let you close first. And you have some time. You can go.
I thought, I was thinking that he was going to, I just, we've talked about different situations and haven't spoken much to the environment on my part, but as supervisor in the town of Gardner, we revamped the entire sewer district and we put in constructed wetlands, which was a rather novel idea at the time. But it cut down on chemicals and it was a natural approach. We addressed the transfer station, which is garbage, and it was in a really poor state of repair. And we worked steadily, little by little, in doing basic infrastructure. I got off the Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency board just this past winter, and I was totally impressed with the fact that the agency was running so well. As a town supervisor, I had issues with it back in 02 and 03. It was very difficult to deal with. At this time, I find that the agency is very attentive to the needs of the towns, and it's very proactive in trying to attempt to find a solution to solid waste that we're up against right now, because Seneca Falls is scheduled to close in 2025, which is we're already late in getting something established. We had a committee look at a 12-month committee look at the situation from the legislature, and 36 months later, had not really created a policy. We need to have a policy. There's no doubt about it. If the environment is going to be terribly affected if we don't know what to do with our trash. We didn't know what to do with the recycles in Kingston for several months, and it was creating real big problems. So this is international. The Chinese have been the purchaser of most recycles and then raised their standard. And then we've gone from getting money for recycles to having to pay to get them removed. Long ago when I was first entering college, I had a instructor that said water and waste are the two biggest problems. And if you have clean water, you're okay. If you have waste backing up, you have a problem. So
Landfill in Dutchess County, or excuse me, landfill in Ulster County.
Mark would be excited
Mark's
about
would be
that.
excited about the landfill in Dutchess County, right?
we had a study going called GUS, Green, Ulster, and Sullivan. There was some acceptance of a possible site in Green for a landfill, which would make it very convenient for both Sullivan and Ulster and Green. And there was not the great opposition that we've experienced here in Ulster. Done right, landfills work. But it's not a single-legged stool. There's still Poughkeepsie's Dutchess County's burn plant meets all EPA standards. It's getting old. I think it's 18 years old with a 25-year lifespan. They're in the market for solutions themselves, so they're coming out. I mean, I could see partnering with Dutchess. I think Ulster and Dutchess have the size, and that you need size, you need tonnage to make waste management profitable. If you have too little, the expenses involved, you still have to have the same footprint and equipment and technology. But if you don't have enough tonnage, you're going to, then once again, the people are paying. And we, at this point, I think Ulster County Resource Recovery Agency is self-sufficient. We haven't funded them for years. And I'm very proud of the work that Tim Rose has been doing there. Plus, he's got the crew behind him. The morale is excellent.
Okay, thank you. We have a few minutes. You can talk about this, or you can just in general make your closing statement.
I'll wrap. Yeah,
Okay.
now we're doing time. I'll wrap up. Happy to answer any follow-ups on it. So thank you for having me. Thanks for everybody that's tuned in. You always ask the best questions, so thank you for a lot of time covering us and holding us accountable. I appreciate it. I love this job. I absolutely every day wake up and I feel honored and I feel blessed to have this job. I've been in just over 4 months now, and I'm really proud of what the team that I built and the collective group have accomplished. We've started to really tackle the opioid epidemic. We have held the line on taxes and brought them to the lowest level in over a decade. We've protected our environment and really leaned into making it a competitive economic advantage in our economy here, and a whole host of other things. But it's not just about like what we accomplish. It's also, I believe, how we accomplish it, how one governs, and the ethos that we bring. So, growing up here in Kingston and in this county, I learned these values from my parents and coaches and teachers and religious leaders of service, that you're part of a community and you have a responsibility to serve in whatever way or ways you can. And I really worked to bring that ethos, the same ethos that led me to West Point and guided me through Iraq, to the job as county executive, and an ethos of servant leadership. So that's why these town halls that I've done, 20 town halls in 20 weeks, going to every corner of the county. By the end of next week, I'll have had a town hall in every town, to really engage people, to not just go and talk at them, but to actually have a conversation. Most of these hour-plus long sessions, I open up for a minute, and then we have this great discussion. And I just want to share one story. I was out in Denning, one of my first town halls, and I heard about a group of veterans there who had to go all the way to Sullivan County, to another county, just to get the medical services that we clearly owe them. And being a vet and being our county executive, that's unacceptable. So we were able to, right after that, of hearing that issue, immediately address it, get our incredible Department of Veteran Services in Ulster County to help them with both the transportation and getting the other services that they need. And we've been doing this across the county the last few months, really connecting with people and showing them that not only can we deliver for them and follow up, but that government can actually work, that we can work across party, that the executive and the legislature can work, and really renew people's faith in government. So beyond just serving the people of the county, which is an awesome responsibility that I take very seriously, I think we have an obligation to renew people's faith in government. And that's what I'm trying to do. And I think we're making good headway. And I would be honored to have the opportunity to continue this work.
All righty. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We kept it right to an hour, so that's always good.
Election starts on Saturday.
Election
Early
starts on
voting
Saturday.
starts Saturday. We have
Starts Saturday.
seven polling stations, and you all, thank you for covering that and getting out the word. It's critical that people know that. And then November 5th is.
And folks can, I think it's important to know just before we sign off here that during the early voting period, anybody who wants to vote can vote at any one of those early polling sites. They don't have to vote in the one in their town. And in fact, there won't be one in every town, but there will be 7 throughout the county. And anybody from any town can vote in any one of those sites anywhere.
It's kind of cool. It's a historic moment for New York State. I'm really proud that we're doing it.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Good luck in the election, and we'll be seeing you on the trail, I guess.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.